this up and the battle is yours. Fantastic work!
Ladies and gents, my name is Xander, aka Deislayers, and in this video, we're going to discuss and review all the brand new changes that have just happened within the Season of Opulence, specifically for the Luna's Howl and the Not Forgotten. Essentially what this entails is looking at these two weapons pre and post nerf in a private match, as well as with the weapons TTKs in their base stats. Now what I mean by a private match is I really wanted to see as to how these two weapons were going to perform via their bullet magnetism, their range factors, and their recoil directions, and within that recoil direction as to how much overall bloom was going to be consistent within the weapon's reticle. On top of that, I really wanted to kind of give you guys a side-by-side comparison analysis of the weapon with, say, something like the Last Word, the Ace of Spades, and other weapons that might have kill clip active, like the Service Revolver or the Bygones. And so the only thing left to do, my friends, is to eviscerate that notification button, and let's jump right into the video. By now, I'm sure that many of you have already heard as to exactly what Bungie is doing with these weapons, but just as a little bit of a recap, what they're doing is they're tuning them and they transformed them from their 180 rate of fire down to a 150 rate of fire. But not just that, Magnetism Howl no longer does extra damage on that third and final shot, and rather, it's just going to do the exact same critical damage output if you happen to still get a body shot. What this entails is that this weapon is going to be very consistent and still get a 3-tap on a regular basis, but at the same time, weapons like the Spare Rations and the Thorn can get this exact same TTK value, but the key difference here is that they have to land critical headshots, whereas this one only has to land 2 critical headshots and a body shot to then get that 3-tap. Understanding that, it's normally at this point in time that I would really like to actually show you guys the weapon's TTK values and how they contrast to other weapons, but what I think is actually even more important than this is the weapon's bullet magnetism, their recoil directions, and their effective ranges pre and post nerf. And so what we're going to do this very second is we're going to go into that private match and test all those things out. As we go into the private match, the very first thing that I want to test is the weapon's bullet magnetism, specifically on the Lunas at 25 meters. You're going to recognize that I'm doing 3 types of tests, 3 on the right hand side of the head and 3 on the top side of the head. And what this is then entailing is showing as to how much that the weapon can actually miss and still have a bullet register that's hitting for both of these two perspectives. As we get further and further out, of course you're then going to expect more bullets to miss. And so this is actually quite good for the Lunas at 25 meters, but when we do this post-nerf, things get actually quite better. And so when we do this exact same type of test again, what you're going to realize is that those first 2 tests did the exact same thing as what the Lunas did pre-nerf. But what's different here is that we take 2 more additional shots and we can then see that it's actually able to hit more shots at longer ranges on the right hand side of the head. When we do this exact same thing for the top side of the head, there really isn't that big of a difference, but what I will say is that it does feel as if it's able to land more shots even at the top side of the head post nerf. Once again, we're going to do this exact same thing for the Not Forgotten, and so the footage that you guys are seeing this very second is from the pre-nerf. And already we can tell that this thing is doing quite well in contrast to what the Lunas did when it was pre-nerf. And so just like from before, I'm doing those 3 test cases, 3 on the right hand side of the head and 3 on the top side of the head to really see as to how much that I can actually miss and still land bullets. Doing these exact same types of tests post-nerf, that's when we get to see that this thing is actually doing even better in terms of its bullet magnetism. And that's then going to allow us to have those first 2 shots be almost the same, but the second 2 shots on the right hand side of the head means that we can shoot even further and still actually miss a Guardian while the weapon's still going to technically say that's going to land a shot. When we do this on the top side of the head, this is also a significant difference, and I'm able to actually land more shots on the very top of the head at longer ranges, and I simply could not do this from before. Taking this one step further, I wanted to test this exact same stuff out at 30 meters, and although I didn't do it pre-nerf, I did do it post-nerf. And so this is going to be a very good comparison analysis, so then you can really see as to how much overall bullet magnetism that the Not Forgotten has over the Lunas, and right now that we're seeing that the Lunas isn't quite as well doing as what it did at 25 meters, but then when we switch over to that of the Not Forgotten, this is when we see an even greater increase in the weapon's bullet magnetism, both for the right hand side of the head and the top side of the head. In seeing all these tests via these private matches, I want you to really comprehend that the post-nerf Lunas and the post-nerf Not Forgotten got a significant increase in their overall bullet magnetism, both for that at 25 meters and 30 meters. And if I had to take this even one step further, I would definitely say that the Not Forgotten still has good bullet magnetism at 25 meters, but not quite as good as what that the Lunas has at that range. But then going back to 30 meters, that's when the Not Forgotten definitely has a greater bullet magnetism than the Lunas because it simply has more overall range. Speaking of range, that's actually what we're going to go test right now once again in private matches. And so as we go back in there, the footage that you guys are seeing now is from the pre-nerf Not Forgotten and the Lunas. And with this pre-nerf on the Not Forgotten and the Lunas had a maximum range output at 28 meters, whereas with a little bit more testing on the Not Forgotten, that's when it had a maximum damage output, or rather a maximum range output at 31 meters. Now the reason that this might have changed for the Not Forgotten and the Lunas is because now they do damage output values of 68 per crit instead of 57. And so I thought to myself, okay, well maybe that's going to make a little bit of a difference in the weapon's overall range output, but I want to test this nonetheless. So here we are right now in the post-nerf of the Not Forgotten and the Lunas, and you guys can see from right here that first with the Lunas, I thought that it was going to do the exact same damage output at 68, but it didn't quite do that at 28 meters. So I went down to 27 meters, and lo and behold, that's where we see that critical damage output at 68. And understanding that, I wanted to go test the Not Forgotten next. And so as we go back a little bit further and test the NF, we see that right at 31 meters, the Not Forgotten is doing the exact same damage output that it was at 31 meters from the pre and post nerf, and so its maximum range output hasn't changed at all in the slightest and is still at 31 meters. I don't know about you, but that right there certainly surprised me, as I was actually expecting both these two weapons to have a greater range increase in contrast to what they did from the pre and post nerf. But nonetheless, it is what it is, and so the very next thing that I wanted to test next is the weapon's overall recoil direction pre and post nerf once again. So here we are back in those private matches. I'm just doing this at approximately 10 meters right next to the power box. And so the main thing that I want you guys to see here is that I'm pacing my shots pre-nerf with the Lunas and the Not Forgotten, and then I'm going to spam my shots with both of them once again. As you guys can tell from this overall analysis, you can certainly see that the Lunas is going to be much more consistent in contrast to that of the Not Forgotten, because when I'm spamming these shots, that's when we see a massive difference in the weapon's overall recoil control. But not just that, I really want you to pay attention to how each of these two weapons' reticles is contrasting and expanding when I'm pacing my shots and when I'm not. As promised, here is that post-nerf footage of both these exact same two tests that we just did. And so once again, I'm pacing my shots with the Lunas, and then I'm going to spam them, and then I'm going to do the exact same thing with the Not Forgotten, and then spam its shots, so then you guys can see as to how contrastingly different their two recoil patterns actually are. As you're seeing this entire process go down, really focus in on the weapon's reticles and see how their brackets on the outside of the sights are contracting significantly when I'm pacing my shots, but expanding drastically when I'm not pacing my shots. And that's then once again making the cone for landing shots much bigger, and that then means more inaccuracy and thus more missed shots. In seeing those tests, I want you guys to take away two things. Number one, the recoil patterns really aren't that different in contrast to what they were from a pre and post nerf. But what is different is the weapon's cones when you are pacing your shots and when you're not. And if there's only one thing that you guys have got to take away from this video, that is to pace your shots. If you don't pace your shots, that's when the weapon's reticle and cone is going to get much bigger, thus incurring that you're going to miss more shots, and that's then of course going to increase the weapon's TTK value exponentially. This is definitely something that you do not want to happen to you, because you're trying to make this thing more reliable and more consistent, and the best way to do that is to pace your shots. In understanding this key and essential fact about how to use the Not Forgotten and the Lunas, I actually want to take one step back and just remind you guys of what I said from earlier, and that the weapon's TTK value now is at 0.8 seconds. But that is definitely not what it was from the pre-nerf, and just so that you guys can see this, here's a pre and post nerf analysis of the weapon's TTK values right there on screen. If you were so inclined, what you could actually say is that this is a weapon buff, because now the weapon's base TTK values has actually increased by 0.2 seconds. But keep in mind that the whole goal of the Not Forgotten and the Lunas was Magnificent Howl, And how that was working was when you got 2 critical headshots, you could then get a body shot and thus decrease the weapon's TTK value exponentially by a drastic factor and actually have it become 0.67 seconds. As you guys can see from right here, this is exactly what I'm talking about with, once again, that pre and post nerf of the Not Forgotten and the Lunas with its perk procced and not procced via Magnificent Howl. The main thing that I want you guys to take away from this is that Magnificent Howl is no longer increasing the weapon's damage output for body shots or critical headshots when you do happen to get it procced. And so this then means that this weapon is pretty much going to be a very consistent weapon for a 150 rate of fire hand cannon that is almost always going to give you that 3-tap potential as long as you happen to get those 2 crits, and then regardless of whether or not you happen to get a critical headshot or a body shot, it's then going to once again do 68 points of damage. In grasping as to how unbelievably different that these 2 things are, with the pre and post nerf for both the Lunas and the Not Forgotten, you're probably thinking to yourself, alright, well, how is this thing going to compare post nerf with something like, say, a Last Word, an Ace of Spades, or a Service Revolver, looking at only the weapon's base TTK values? Well, Deislayers, your wish has been granted, and as you guys can see from right there, here is all the weapon's base TTK values, with the Not Forgotten on the left, followed by the Last Word, Ace of Spades, and Service Revolver next. When comparing to, say, something like the Ace of Spades or the Service Revolver, we're really not going to see that big of a difference, especially for the 150 rate of fire hand cannons. But where we are going to see a big difference here is with the Last Word, because with that bad boy, its optimal TTK is at 0.53 seconds. But not just this, its body shot TTK at 0.8 seconds is the exact same thing as what the Not Forgotten is when it happens to have its optimal TTK values. Whether or not this is good or bad, I'm not going to really say, as that I'm going to leave up to you, my friends. But what I will show you next is the exact same contrast and comparison analysis, but just with a little bit of a slight twist on this, and that is with weapons when they happen to have kill clip procced. And as you guys can see from right there, that's all the information, and right now I just want to say, wake up, slap your face, because this kind of information is fantastic. And the reason why I say that is because, with even having Magnificent Howl procced, the Bygones, Kill the Orchid, and Service Revolver having kill clip procced are all going to have faster TTK values at 0.53 seconds, 0.43 seconds, and 0.67 seconds respectively for the Bygones, Kill the Orchid, and Service Revolver. If you happen to 2-tap somebody with the Kill the Orchid, or happen to 3-tap them with the Service Revolver, then I think it's a fair assessment to say that enemy guardians who are using the Not Forgotten and the Lunas are going to be a little bit salty. But even so, what I will say is that both the Not Forgotten and the Luna's Howl have not changed whatsoever from the pre and post nerfs in terms of their actual base stats, and you guys can see all those stats right there on screen. The only real difference here in terms of the weapon's post and pre-nerf base stats is that their rate of fires is of course going to be changed from 180 to 150 as you can tell, but what's also going to change is the weapon's impact, as it was 78, but now it's 79, and that's because once again the weapon's rate of fire has changed, and with that the weapon's impact also changes. Now the only other thing that I want to mention about these weapons is that they're still classified as precision frame weapons, and not, I repeat, not lightweight frame weapons like the Spare Rations or the Thorn or something else along those lines. To be more precise, precision frame weapons are always going to convert 80% of the weapon's horizontal recoil to vertical recoil, making the weapons that much more accurate and that much more consistent. But with lightweight frame weapons, that's not the case, and rather, they're actually going to get an increase in the weapon's movement speed, thus increasing your character's strafing speed, and that's then going to associate to a higher mobility. And having said that, you might be thinking, alright, well, what about the weapon's aim assistance from post and pre-nerf? And the best thing that I can say to you guys is that I did a lot of testing for this, and I didn't see a single change whatsoever in the slightest. It didn't matter if I was moving, it didn't matter if my opponent was moving, it didn't matter if we were both moving, as that aim assistance factor was simply going to be the exact same thing, and it felt like that even though these weapons' damage output and range values might have gotten tweaked ever so slightly along with their bullet magnetism. And seeing all these changes in the factors of what I just mentioned to you, I'm very intrigued to hear all your thoughts. And it doesn't matter as to whether or not you like it, you don't, you'll think that this is complete muff garbage trash, you think that you're never going to use them again, or you think that they're going to absolutely eviscerate, eradicate, and obliterate every single guardian in their path, It doesn't matter, as I can't wait to see as to exactly what you guys gotta say, and you always know that your opinions are certainly going to be respected. Lastly, be sure to watch the newest, check the latest, and share a comment link on social media because you are the greatest. That's pretty much all I've got for you as of right now, Deislayers. And as always, GG TNT.